everybody know what we're here for right now? Is anybody excited about some sort of a new client? Does anybody here want to see what happens when we move away from Java? Has anybody here already tried this out inside in RuneFest today? Are you happy with what we have gotten for you? Oh, geez, come on. Well, I have our technical director here to talk to you about our journey from Java all the way to what we've shown to plenty of players today. So can you please have a huge shout for Mod Phillip?
Hi, I'm Mod Phillip, the technical director for RuneScape. So the new RuneScape client is nearing completion, and we've brought it with us today. So I thought I'd take you through how we got to this point and what we have left to do. So firstly, I'm going to talk to you about why we decided we needed a new client and why we decided to write one in C++. And then I'll move on to talk about the new client that we have for you and what it means for you. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session with some of the team. And if your question doesn't get answered then, you can come and find us in the new client booth later this afternoon, and we'll try and answer it for you. So we couldn't really just make the Java client any better than it was. Java support is becoming more and more of a problem when writing games, particularly in the browser. The browser manufacturers have been removing a lot of support recently, mostly due to security concerns. It's very difficult for us to interact with the graphics APIs and other APIs that we need to in an efficient way. And in general, it's quite difficult for us to have future-proof support for other platforms using Java. As I mentioned at RuneFest last year, the graphics engine in the Java client is really designed as a software engine rather than using the GPU to take advantage of modern hardware and game engine processors. So we can't really make the Java graphics engine any faster, and we can't really add anything to it without it getting much slower, which has really left us in a pretty stationary position for quite a few years. So if we want to progress to, much better graphics, then we need to write again from scratch. As well as that, the Java client loads into memory a certain area of the world, and when it needs to move somewhere else, it has to dump all of that out and load another area into memory, which leads you to having loading lines as you walk around the world, so the loading please wait screens, and lots of delays when that's happening. If we want to have a continuous experience in the game, where you're wandering around and it's building the map as you walk around, then we would need to start again there too. Another thing, the client was originally written 11 years ago or so when RuneScape 2 came out, and in that time it's got a lot more complicated and a lot more difficult to maintain. And if we want a client that's going to last another 10, 11 years, then we needed to start again with something fresh and a better layout of the code. And there's just the screenshot. So when we came to decide we wanted to write a new client a few years ago, we looked at the technologies that were available, and one stood out for us. Using JavaScript, we'd be able to remain in the browser, and we would be embracing a technology that was cutting edge and still is, and is embraced by major browser manufacturers. And if we want to be in the browser space, that seemed like a good idea. Unfortunately, it didn't really perform how we wanted it to, and that, I think, is mostly because the platform's not really ready for commercial games development. It is something that I think it needs some years to go still. But what we did wasn't wasted. We took the architecture that we had. Some of it was sound. We had a decent graphics engine, although I think we could have done better, and we have since then. We had the continuous world that we wanted. We'd moved away from Java. We'd got rid of the security problems and so on there. And everything looked pretty rosy from that point of view. But C++ is really the key way to write commercial games still, even many years since it originally was the case. And it gives you a lot of control over how your game works, how your game performs,
And this is really what we need to get a performance-critical system working. We need to be able to make the changes that we need to get into the heart of the system for. And it also allows us to have full control over how things behave on different platforms like Windows and OS X in very custom ways rather than going through APIs that don't give you full control. A bit of a question here. Well, one reason that it's taken us a long time to get to this point is that we want to give you something that's stable and is not going to have lots of crash problems and problems for you that are graphical based and gameplay based. And it's as I'm going to talk about in a bit, really legacy content causes a lot of that problem. We have 11 years of content that's been written in this engine that was aimed for a Java engine that was written in a certain way, and the content expects things to behave in a certain way. So there are exact timings that are expected, there are exact ways of ordering things, there are things that were originally bugs but have been used as features. All in all, it's quite difficult to fit an engine to existing content, whereas if you were writing a new game, we'd have been done by now because you can fit the content to the engine instead. I do now have a little video of a few of the problems that we had as we were going through, which I can't see. Oh, there we go. Here we go. Guy gets in a little minecart and goes through a shortcut. And, oh, he's still in his minecart. And, oh, and he's floating around in his minecart. That's probably not supposed to happen. Yeah, I think he's going to be stuck like that. Yeah, no, you're not going to get out of it like that. Okay, and here we go, falling down the waterfall 3 times. And, oh, you didn't want that dwarf multi-cannon, did you? Okay. Oh, he's supposed to be facing the other way. That's just completely wrong. He's probably supposed to be on the scaffolding rather than in front of it. And on the right floor rather than bouncing up and down. Oh, that was weird. Oh, you can only have female characters. That's a bit odd. Oh, where's he going? Oh, he's back over there. Okay. Oh. Oh, he's under the floor. Right, there we go. He's over there. Oh, that's odd. And the snake jiggling around there. Oh, and here I think the Queen Black Dragon, I think she'd be a lot happier if she actually had any fire. But there you go. So, the new client itself, you're not going to change. You're the same players that we're aiming this new client for. And similarly, we don't expect you to have to go out and buy a new computer to be able to use this new client. So we've been working to try and make it work on as large a range of your hardware as possible. Although some of you do seem to have pretty terrible computers, it wouldn't be a bad idea for you to ask for a new one for Christmas anyway. We want to give you as good or a better experience than you get in Java in the new client. That's in terms of performance and in terms of quality. And really, I think that we have done a fair job of that already, but there's still a way to go. And as I say, there's still a way to go. On the mid and high range machines, I think we're giving you as good or better an experience. We have some performance things to solve on the lower end machines, but as I mentioned, with C++, we have full control. Where with HTML5, we didn't. We were stuck with, what the browser can do. Well, some of you do have really good computers, but we have been concentrating on the more standard PCs that you have. If you look at the PCs that RuneScape players have got, most of you are playing on laptops from a few years ago rather than epic gaming rigs. But we have done some things that work across the board, particularly on high-end machines though. One is obviously the bigger draw distance. In the Java client, you'd never get a screenshot like this one. You'd only be able to, you probably wouldn't even see the tower nearest to you from this point with the camera. So I think that has made the biggest difference to the game. It's also probably the most expensive thing we've done in terms of the power of the machines, so we might need to bring it in a little bit on lower-end machines, but I'm hopeful that it will still be much higher than it is on Java, even on the worst computers. We do now have a fully gamma-corrected lighting pipeline, including global illumination via ambient occlusion and irradiance, and I think it gives a much more vibrant look and feel to the game. We've got much nicer shadows than we had even in HTML5. We have a big shadow draw distance that gives you fully dynamic shadows as you walk around. There's no more spot shadows under players and NPCs, no little circles that show you where your shadow is supposed to be. You actually get a proper shadow. And similarly, we've got water that has proper reflections and refractions and distortions and flow in the rivers. And it all looks much better than it did, even in HTML5. One thing we did find when we increased the draw distance is that in the Java client, it's perfectly okay for us to have a really hard fog, because immediately behind that, the world ends. So we're only drawing a tiny bit further than the fog, so it can end quite abruptly. What we found in the newer client with the increased draw distance is that we needed a new effect to be able to work that out. So we've added light scattering, which is kind of a more realistic effect. It's what you get if you look into the horizon in the real world. You get a sort of blurry, I think a slight hazing effect, and usually bluish if you've got blue sky, or depending on what sky color you've got. So I think you can see it in this screenshot here on the right-hand side and around the Dominion Tower, where it's getting a bit more hazy than you would find normally. Where are we up to? Well, we're nearly there. There's still a few things to do. We've got the world map isn't in there at all. There's no installers. There's no launchers around that. So there's a lot of infrastructural work to do to get that done. We also have quite a few bugs, graphical and gameplay to resolve. But I think from the fact that we brought it with us today and you can play it, you can make a judgment yourself as to how close we are on that. I think you'll be pleased with what you find if you do go and play it. We've already got better performance than Java on high and mid-end PCs particularly. We're getting much higher frame rates than we get in Java. The frame rate isn't capped like it is in Java. And I think that you'll agree if you head on those machines, which aren't epic gaming rigs, they're lower-end gaming PCs, I'd say, with decent graphics cards. And those are getting a good performance out of them. So I think that gives you some idea of where we are there. We do have more optimization work to do on the lower end, and we're fairly confident on that compared to how we were with HTML5. As I say, we have control. So I think that's probably the key thing that we need to concentrate on next. We have much better cross-platform support in this new client than we had before. So not just in Windows, but in OS X, for example. In OS X was where we actually did most of the early development, was on MacBooks under OS X. So I think you'll find that we have much better native support for OS X than we had in the Java client. And we do also have Linux support, which will be coming out presumably at the same time as the rest. And now what you've been waiting for whilst I've been wittering at you, we have a video for you of where we are so far. So that's all in-game footage captured with a camera a bit like the orb of Oculus. So that was all captured last week, so that's pretty up to date as to where we are at the moment. Just waiting for my presentation to come back. Right, the big question. Not yet. We've still got some stuff to do, and really, we don't really want to give you something that isn't finished. A lot of games would give you an early beta so that they can get nice early feedback on the gameplay and so on, but this is not a new game. This is a game that's been out for 10 years. We know what you like to some degree on this stuff, so what we want to do is give you something that you'll want to play every day by the time we give you a beta. So when we come to give you a beta, which we will do, there will be a beta using the live game, then you'll be able to log in with your live accounts as you can today in the new client room and play as you would normally. And that's what we want to be able to achieve. At the moment, we have some things left to do there. As I say, the performance, the features that we're missing. So it's not quite ready yet. When we finish and actually have come to launch the new client, which we're not going to do until we've come to an agreement with you, the players, that we're ready to do so, we will want to deprecate and eventually remove the Java client. If we look at the game at the moment, the problem is if we want to add new things to the new client, it means that we are going to be held back by the old one. This is why we're writing the new client in the first place. There was no point in us writing a new client if we're still going to be held back by the same things that the Java client is holding us back with. So really, at some point, we do want to remove it. The HTML5 client, our new client, does have a browser form of output. We don't think it's ready yet. We have, using a technology called mscripton, we've exported the game to JavaScript, but in a form that is more performant. And avoids the problems with JavaScript, which is that if you write it by hand, it tends to be about 4 or 5 times slower than native code. So we're happy with that, except that still the technology is not there. There's some work that the browser manufacturers need to do, which they're hopefully going to do soon, which will allow us, I think, to look back at this again, but it's not quite ready yet. We will probably, though, replace the HTML5 client with it in short order, because it's already better than that anyway. So, post-launch, when we've finished all of that stuff, we have a number of things we want to do. One of them is something that you guys tend not to think about, I think, which is that we have a lot of staff in the office making content for you, and if we can make it easier, faster, to make better quality content, that's good for everybody. That gives you a better experience in RuneScape, and it gives us the ability to do better things for you. So we want to work on that. As I said before, we do have some things that we've done which are for better computers, but really, we haven't done very much along that lines. However, I think a nice change for us will be to be working on higher-end PCs. When we talk to RuneScape players about what they find is the worst bit about RuneScape, or the bit they least like, it's that the graphics are slightly dated. I mean, we don't want to ruin the aesthetic of the game. We don't want to make it a different game by making it completely different graphics, but we think there's things we can do to improve what the game looks like, bring it forwards a bit in terms of its look and feel without ruining that, and we want to do that next year. Another thing that we've talked about that comes hand in hand with better computers is things like 4K monitors and other large displays and displays with high DPI. And if you log into the game at the moment, you'll find that it's quite hard to use the game because those are all very tiny interfaces, because those interfaces are all designed to work on a certain pixel size. So we think that we can manage to scale those appropriately so that they have a fixed real size rather than a fixed dots per inch. So that's something we want to look at. And then we have something that is a bit more difficult for us, a bit more of a challenge, which is to try and make the game a bit more responsive. I think you'll find at the moment that when you play RuneScape, you can often feel like your click has not been registered. What you've asked it to do is not being done. And that's all based around how our tick system in the server works. We think that we can look at that and see what we can achieve, at least make some prototypes on that. I'm not sure quite what we'll achieve because we need to do the prototypes first, but it's certainly something that I think we're going to spend some time on. And now I'm going to welcome back Mod Connor to the stage, along with Mod Lordgit, the lead graphics developer for RuneScape, and Mod Titus, who has been working on much of the QA for the game, and Mod Sammy, who's been working on a lot of audio stuff, and Mod Dark, who's another graphics developer on RuneScape, to have a bit of a Q&A session. So we've got a lot of questions that we've collected from the forums to go through first, but then we'll be taking some questions from the audience. As I said earlier, if you have questions and they don't get answered here, you can come and find us a bit later on and ask them then.
Thank you very much, David. So is everybody excited? Oh, come on. Okay, so we've answered a lot of questions with the presentation. We're just going to run through some that we had from forums, like Phil was saying. And I'm just going to kick this off with something that gets asked a lot, and we have it here from Atlas Velox. What is the recommended amount of RAM for this?
So, I mean, when we talk about recommended specs, we're not sure on a lot of things. One thing we are happy with, though, is RAM. I don't think it's going to be a problem, really. When we look at the RAM usage and what RAM is available on people's systems, most RuneScape players have got several gigabytes of RAM, and we have instead taken the look that we want it to run on 32-bit Windows, 32-bit systems, and that means that we're going to end up with a RAM cap of 1.7, 1.8 gigs on that, and it's running under that at the moment. I think that's the important thing.
So the fact that we've been kind of targeting generally what people are using already means that
yes, exactly.
Run it.
Exactly.
Excellent. I have a question from, there's about 7 or 8 on it. I'm sorry, I'm not going to read all of these people out, but you'll know who you are if you recognize the question. Will there be a standalone version of the client?
You're asking me that one as well. Oh, well.
I'm going to, yeah, Phil, you answer that one.
Okay. Well, as I said before, I think really when you look at what our players are using now, 70% of you are already using the downloadable client rather than the applet in the browser. And I mean, a lot of that is because of the support being removed for that. But we're going to take advantage of that, and initially, at least, there will only be a standalone version. As I said, we're going to have the unscripted version at some point in the future, but not to start off with. And that would be our browser route when we do.
Excellent. Actually, this is very appropriate for Mod Titus here on my right, because he got this working for me. The Tech Den has asked, will the new client work for Darkscape?
Everyone hear me okay? Yeah, it will. I was playing it there the other week. It's great. Currently, you can see players at a further distance, so I was able to spot people before they came and killed me, so I was running around. But yeah, it works perfectly, and it's a fabulous experience. It really adds to the atmosphere of the game and improves it already.
I think the big thing we were looking at was, because we changed the atmospherics in the game and some of the lighting, we need to do a little bit of work content side, but in theory, the client is ready for us.
Yeah.
Excellent. I think this should really go to everybody. J Chaplin 2 has asked, what feature was the hardest to implement in NXT? Sam, let's start with you.
At that end.
I'm going to swing all the way around. I'm back to you, Phil. Just to put you at the end this time.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, so I'd say the static in the game, which is for the audio, which is something you probably won't notice, but it used to be quite a big problem in NXT, and it subtly is still, and the reason why that's so difficult is because finding where resampling is going wrong is kind of such a vague and big problem where it could be introduced at any point, and so getting that out of the way was quite difficult, but it is actually mostly gone. There's only a few bits where you can hear little blips and stuff, and I'm still working on that.
Yeah, I think the audio in general, we've fixed a lot of things that
Yeah,
should help.
there's been quite a lot of things that have been fixed, so it's in a quite good state at the moment.
Yeah, better than Java, I'd say, but
Yeah.
I think there's a few fundamental things about the way the audio is being done in the game that make it difficult.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, so we might not solve everything, but yeah.
Mod Dark, what knocked you out?
Yeah, so recently I've been working on a model level of detail system, which basically it takes the content and automatically reduces the quality of the models, and then it can use those in distant scenes to improve the frame rate whenever the draw distance is absolutely huge. Sadly, it's not in our demo at the moment that we've got because it's still work in progress, but it's getting there. It's just hard to avoid cutting holes in things. It's a very sort of unintelligent algorithm. It's a very difficult thing to do to reduce the quality. Normally, you'd have the artists actually create lower quality versions of models, but with the amount of content RuneScape has, that just isn't feasible, unfortunately. So we're trying to automate things.
I think it's interesting that that's never really been a consideration for us before because of the tighter draw distance. Suddenly we knocked it out, we're like, oh, that looks amazing, but also nothing is running very well.
Yeah, although I think the experience is pretty high. It's really for the lower end machines, I think, that we'd want to do that for.
Well, for me, solving the many lights problem is probably one of the biggest challenges. RuneScape has a lot of lights, and we couldn't solve that the way most games do with normal forward rendering. So we had to be a bit creative and try something called a light index deferred shading system. So that's basically solved the problem for us. We still need to make some optimizations with that system. And also because deferred shading wasn't really an option for us given the broad spectrum of hardware we have to target. So we're about as close to deferred shading as you can get without being fully deferred and using multiple render targets. And probably the other problem of just getting 10 to 12-year-old content looking like next gen or something close to next gen with a brand new rendering system is very challenging. And doing fully dynamic lighting and shadowing as well, and having that work performantly on a very broad spectrum of hardware was a really big challenge for me personally.
I think he said the one thing, didn't he?
The one thing, well,
yeah.
Lighting.
Okay.
Just broad lighting. I mean, it was
There's many
hilarious.
things.
there are it's one thing, one
many
feature.
challenges.
Well, I'm obviously going to say the thing I worked on was the most difficult, but it was just some debug stuff. In terms of testing, it was always a good day when somebody came along and said, hey, I've made a small change to the animation system, and I looked very scared at them. That was always a big thing. There was always lots of bosses to go check, combat to do. There was crazy, like any skill under the sun. There was a lot of stuff that covered. Lighting and things, that was always a big one because it's so variant across the game. Like you have dungeons where it's dark and scary, and you have Prifendas, which is really bright and airy, and you have to make sure those areas keep the same feel, and that's always a big challenge that came up.
I think always a thing when you come to testing something like this is any change we make in the engine affects the whole world across, the whole game, 10 years of content. And testing that is a massive challenge. You can't just go and have a look at every single piece of content in the game every time we change some global thing. We have to just, pick and choose what we're doing, really.
Actually, just to add to that, so we've got a brand new post-processing pipeline in the new client, and we're using something called, because we've got a gamma correct rendering pipeline, that actually, although it made everything look kind of better, it was a lot brighter than what kind of people were used to. So we had to look at lots of different tone mapping and be quite creative with how we're using that to basically get the right tones, get the dark scenes dark enough, vice versa, and get the colors correct. That was a real big challenge. I've personally worked with the art team for many hours, and that's been really quite painful, but we think we've got there now. Everyone seems to be pretty happy with the colors and the lighting. So,
Well, seeing it, like all of the assets have been created with a clamped upper value, and the artists would just keep pushing things all the way up to 11 to try and get it bright enough. And now we saw what that actually made the world look like, and it was just white out. It was scary.
Yeah, I think we saw some things that were sort of 120% of the maximum brightness threshold and things. Just bits where people had. Well, artists had made it look really good and really bright in the Java client, and then it just is ridiculous when you come to it elsewhere.
I did also notice spotting loads of extra point lights everywhere. That was hilarious. Like, you'd start walking around the world, and suddenly there were point lights in the most random. There was one outside a cave, and in the daylight. I don't know why it was there.
Oh, well, yeah. So we fixed point lights, and in terms of fixing them, we found out there is a lot of places where they've just been mapped down for no apparent reason. And just outside Falador Gates, above Varrego's Cave, all these random places. And yeah, that was an interesting find when I was like, is this broken? No, it's actually working as intended.
It's just it never worked in the Java client.
Yes.
So I'll move on. Will we be limited to the 50 frames per second maximum that players are seeing in the Java client at the moment?
So currently the logic is still capped at 50 FPS. So things like, you know, player logic, gameplay, and animation. But we've totally taken the cap off the rendering. So now, depending on your machine, it will just run as fast as it can run, essentially. So yeah, if you've got a really fast machine, you will see frame rates into the hundreds, hopefully, and it will be really silky smooth.
Any idea on what the specifications to play the new client will be? Anybody want to grab that one?
I think I kind of covered that before, which is that we want the game to run on the hardware that you have, because we don't really expect you to all go out and buy new computers. So we want it to be, you know, at least 98, 99, you know, some high-ish percentage of your machines are all going to continue to work with the new client. And we're getting better performance on a lot of them already than we get in the Java client.
I'm going to throw this one over to Sammy. Will NXT handle sound and music better? You touched on it a bit before, but I think there's more to go into.
Yeah, so when we rewrote the audio engine now, we kept it quite open on what we wanted to, like, what we could expand on it with. For example, multi-channel audio is something which would be quite cool in the game, and it's been thought about in the Java client, but it would be kind of too difficult to do that. And not that we're going to do it in NXT confirmed, but the framework is there, and to do it would be a lot easier. And there's also, like, I'm sure you've experienced some bugs in Java with the audio, especially, I think, infinitely repeating sounds. It's quite a big one. Don't know, no one? But yeah,
I'm seeing a few nodding heads.
Yeah, that doesn't exist in NXT, so there's stuff like that, which is just, we're getting rid of those kind of bugs and solving those kind of issues, even the little things, so your audio experience will be good.
No, better anyway. I mean, I think that there are some things that are related to how the audio is triggered that mean there's always going to be some delays and things that you wouldn't want. So some things are very difficult for us to sync up because the content tends to trigger the audio right at the point when it's expecting it to start playing. The problem with that is that you need to know enough to load the samples, you know, off disk or into memory to be able to play them, which takes, you know, half a second or something. So the problem is that, again, the legacy content, the content's been written in a way that just doesn't lend itself to having synchronized audio properly, really.
It's been a continuous problem, but I think we're getting better. So
yeah,
I mean, it is sounding much better.
And I mean, it's the sort of thing where you'd have to go over all the content to be able to fix the audio in those ways, and it's a big task.
So I'm going to call Lord Git out on this one. At the start of the year, and this is from Paradox Zen, you apparently posted your first dev blog, and one of the JMods said that there would be more over the summer. The summer is over. There's been no dev blogs.
Yeah, so people probably recognize my mod name now from that first dev blog I did. I did really have intentions to do a few more and go into more technical details about the rendering in the new client, but unfortunately, you know, we're quite a small team with a really mammoth task. So it's not been possible, such as priorities are. However, this is a good reminder that we do need to do more, so I'm going to try and do one more before we launch, and hopefully do a few more after we launch as well. So yeah, apologies for that, but I'll try and get to another one. Thanks.
I think I could probably put, I mean, the presentation that I did today, we can probably put some form of that out there as well.
The amount of people and the no time to do the dev blog because I'm too busy deving the thing leads nicely onto a question from Kiozus. I'm totally jumping around here, but the segues are amazing. How long has this been in progress, and how big is the team on it?
Well, I think that it depends how you look at it, really. We started the HTML5 client back in 2012 or so, I think. And that was just one person to start off with until we had an idea of that he could make things better. And we expanded the team when that started looking good. There were 4 or 5 people, and then a few more. And then it ramped down a bit when we decided it wasn't great. We started on the C++ version, so the actual new client itself, maybe 2 years ago. And the team has been fluctuating between maybe 5 and 8 since then. So not very big, but I think we've managed to do a lot with the resources we have.
Yeah,
so.
it's been fairly impressive. I'm going to throw this one at Mod Dark over there.
Sure.
Are you ready? Dedicated full screen. It's always been troublesome with RS.
Yeah.
All tabbing and tabbing back would revert to windowed rather than leaving it full screen. Are there any chances we can fix that or do something better?
Yeah, no, that's definitely all working well now, so it is, yeah.
We've
already fixed it, essentially. And we're also going to try and target windowed no border, which some of you may use in other games. It's very convenient for multi-monitor setups and stuff like that. We'll try and get that working.
I'm getting a couple of warnings that I need to start finishing up. So unfortunately, everyone, we won't be able to have Q&A inside in the presentation, but all of these are going to be available for you guys to jump and ask questions. I think you guys will be going down to the crypt. Oh no, you guys are in the room just over there. If you haven't tried out NXT, go for it.
We're there, in fact.
Ah. So if you see you're currently on the main stage, that giant arrow will point you the direction you need to walk to go try out this client for yourselves and hopefully pick these guys' brains to answer your questions. Thank you very much.